ASEAN Breakfast Call Dialogue, widening your horizons.
Hi, this is Arlene and you're listening to Duran ASEAN.
Hi, this is Grace. Welcome back.
Of course, we have our ABC dialogue with three very unique guests because they are part of the music industry in Malaysia in one way or another. Let me introduce all the three guests we have here. One is Bihzhu. She's a singer-songwriter. Hi.
Hi.
And another one is Jennifer. She claimed herself as to be an industry insider. Hi.
Hello.
And of course, we have Samad. He came here before at Duran ASEAN. He's a performer and educator.
Hello.
Hello. Hi. So to begin our conversation today, a bit of introduction of yourself. Yeah, can you start with Bihzhu?
Hi, I'm Bihzhu and I'm a singer-songwriter. I've been a solo artist for 3 years and I'm happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Jennifer and I've been working in the industry for 30 years since Sudirman until now. And my main...
Sudirman, that's very long time ago.
If anybody remembers, yeah. Sorry, oops. That's how old I am. And I am an event manager by profession, but I am an industry activist.
Hi, my name is Samad. I'm a performer and educator. I compose music inspired by Malaysia and Malaysian life. And as an educator, I help a lot of adult beginners learn how to play guitar and play music that actually inspires them. I also help a lot of serious music students prepare for scholarship auditions to attend colleges like Berkeley in the US.
Mm-hmm. So to start our conversation today regarding on the music industry in this country, how has this scene moved so far, from Sudirman era to probably a couple of decades ago? Yeah, we can start with you, Bihzhu, to share.
Oh, I thought you were going to go with Jen.
I would love to, but she's still thinking back in that era.
Me first? Oh,
yes,
okay,
of course.
okay. Well, the scene has moved. It's changed. I mean, everybody always says that, last time was easier, this time was easier, and then now it's easier. It makes no difference. The problems are different in whatever era you're in, but the scene has moved forward. We have more musicians. The talent is even greater than before, but our biggest problem still remains the platform for the artists.
Mm-hmm. The platform. The question of platform. Has the platform... were the platform different during the Sudirman's era compared to now? If you want to make a comparison?
In those days, we had bigger platform outside of just the urban areas. We have expos, fun fair, and little shows that went on around the country. Nowadays, yes, we have a harder time doing that now. But it is coming back slowly but surely. Nowadays, I find a lot of more musicians gigging and performing outside of KL.
So with that, we can also say that there are more platforms are created in Malaysia, right?
Yes,
musicians come.
That kind of platform, yes. But then again, we have the other platforms that are restricted, like for independent artists, like radio, television. Those are more restricted for indie artists.
Mm-hmm. I still remember my fun fair era in the 90s, where I actually went to several of the concerts, and it was exciting. It was during those era. What about you, Bihzhu? How was the experience?
Well, about maybe 9 years ago, I started a band with my friend Emmanuel. We were called Rhapsody, and I remember back then the scene was really, I would say, compact. I'm talking about the indie scene. Like, you would go to those 2 or 3 open mics, and everyone would know everyone. But now I think it's grown to the point where there are music gigs and independently organized gigs like almost every day, and sometimes there's 2 or 3 per day. I'm talking about just KL, and the scene has grown so big, so many young musicians coming up that sometimes you don't meet people And
is it a good thing?
Yeah, I think it is, definitely. Because if you're talking about audience as well, like there used to be a smaller audience, and people maybe did not have as much pride in local musicians, but now I think there is sort of a swelling of pride and recognition of that, hey, you know, our local musicians are really talented and they're worth supporting.
And what was your experience about and your idea on the music scene in Malaysia?
I think the scene is pretty diverse now. I'm kind of like in a different. I'm in a lot of different scenes. So I perform in the jazz circle. I have a trio. We do all like the jazz clubs and sometimes the jazz festivals. I perform in the singer-songwriter scene, even though I don't sing, mainly because I play instrumental music. So I'm in a situation where there is no scene actually. So I've always kind of just gone into any scene that would have me, any platform. So me and Bihzhu, we were in the same circles, the same open mic circles, the indie music scene. And I think it was very accepting of what I did. And nowadays, I still perform in festivals, and I'll still get called within the singer-songwriter or indie music scene. They still regard me as a part of that scene, which I'm very happy to be part of. And then I perform with the MPO from time to time, and that's the classical music scene as well. So I meet a lot of people, musicians from different backgrounds. In that regard, I think it's a really interesting time to be a musician. There's a lot of different scenes, there's a lot of different musicians. That's how I see it.
Sounds very dynamic because, being in the different scenes. But how are they different from each other in terms of acceptance level with your music going on?
I find it that, like because people don't know what to expect, right? You come to a singer-songwriter show and you watch Bihzhu and then you watch Reza Saleh, then you suddenly like, why is this instrumental guitarist? Why he's not singing?
Yeah, how are it's the response like?
I find that recently I've been performing at I perform at different events. Like when I perform at TEDx KL, and that was the biggest listening audience I had. And it was amazing, people really liked it. People came up to me after the show. I find that when I perform at bigger shows where there's a higher chance of meeting people who've never seen me before, never known about me. Like when I open for Emmanuel. So I keep meeting people who say hi to me. It's like, I saw you at that concert.
Oh.
Or I saw you play with Reza Saleh at DFP. And it'll be like 5-minute performance, But people remember me from these big shows because they would have never seen me before.
But I think us is a good example of an extremely positive musician, and he practically makes the scene. He's one of those guys that has really gone out and helped the scene come up. He's made the scene. And that's what I tell a lot of people. You need to make your own scene. You can't just sit there and act defeated like nobody listens to my music. You got to make them listen to your music. And with the kind of passion that he plays, he draws people in at live performances. That's why it is important to watch live.
Mm-hmm. What is the kind of evolution of Malaysian music industry from the past until now? Because you say that it's important to watch live. So in the past, were the Malaysian demographic more into like outdoor events, like concert, compared to now?
Well, as you can see, life has changed so much since then. Before, there's no such thing as iPad, YouTube. There's only 2 channels, RTM1 and RTM2. Sorry, that's even as far as back as I go. Black and white TV. Whoa. So, but your focus is restricted. So music would have been number 1 on your list. Now I think the music has fallen down to probably number 10. And it's taken for granted because you listen to it on a daily basis in your car, on your iPhone, in your iPad. So you kind of take music for granted. You're not really paying attention to it. Everything's become elevator music. Whereas before you would take the trouble to, I need to read the CD sleeve, I need to hear the music. I love this artist so much, I'm going to go out and buy every back CD there is. The passion towards music is very, very different because they have more opportunity on the internet, I think.
So do you mean that with the easier access to all this, the music via electronic devices and our social media, our appreciation level has dropped towards the music? Is that what you meant? Or...
In a way it has. There is a lot more access for people that they can watch on the electronic media, but because of not being focused, that means I can listen to every day I can listen to some other new artist. So it's difficult to focus on just one or two artists or be more, how do we say it, loyal to a certain brand. Like last time, for example, when we're growing up, film is Kodak, Ubat Gigi is Colgate, Now it's like, gosh, there's like 5 million
brands.
There are more selections.
On the
And
shelf.
artists is facing the same thing. It's that kind of brand association that is more difficult to grab and to hold.
It seems like what you are saying, that the kind of situation we are having right now is the commodifying of music, where the essence or authenticity of the individual artist or the genre of that music itself have somehow been diluted. But do you blame this on technology, or do you think that there's a bigger picture at play?
I think it's changing, and I think it has to do mainly with attention span. It's not, how some people say, oh, this generation doesn't pay attention, they have short attention span. It's not just that. It's just the fact that we have so much stuff coming at us all the time that it is very rare that you can maintain anyone's attention span for longer than a few hours. There'll be an issue, political issue, and that will maybe attention span of 2-3 days. And so music is even lower than that. So if you release a new music video now and it's highly produced, back in the day probably like, whoa, like the whole week everyone's talking, that video is so awesome. Now if you release, for instance, Halfway Kings, amazing act duo, they released a video, and it's a cool video, in a car. I really like the song, but the attention span of someone talking about that music video will probably last about 4 or 5 days. That's like already quite long.
So how do you try to secure the attention span of youngsters?
I think it comes back down to like what your purpose in making music is. Maybe for an artist whose goal is to, say, become famous, then their path, the choices and decisions they make will be geared towards, that goal. For me, yes, of course, we all know the realities of needing to reach your audience and hold them, but I really feel that if you make music that is true to yourself, even though you might not have like 1 million fans, you might have 10, and those 10 I think are more valuable than say the 1 million fans who like you for 10 minutes and they're gone the next moment. And for my music career especially, I think that has played out. Like I sometimes get messages from fans who bought my album on Bandcamp, and they say the sweetest things, and then those are, I consider those little reminders from the universe telling me that, hey, you're on the right path, and keep doing what you're doing. And sometimes people, maybe again with attention span, people define success in a certain way, like you have to have this number of followers, you have to hit this number of target, you have to be this famous or whatnot. So it comes back down to, personally as a musician, what you want.
Well, it may sound a bit shallow here, but then as much as you can be true to yourself, and the people will appreciate music eventually, but it's also hard to ignore the number of people who follow you, your music, and you need to have followers to move forward.
Yeah, it was a discussion of air just now. Numbers do matter, especially if you want to gain corporate sponsorship, you want to gain the attention of the bigger media out there to support you. So how do you balance that?
Like I was trying to make a point and I completely lost my train of thought. I was trying to say like sometimes success doesn't come immediately or overnight, and that's okay. Because if I look, I've been in being a musician for 9 years, and only 5 years ago did I quit my full-time job to become a musician full-time, and only in the past year have I become 100% a full-time musician, because when I quit my job I still had like a freelance thing going on,
so you went hungry for a couple of years.
I did, and I was saying to Jennifer earlier, I think it's important in every artist's life to go hungry, because that's when you decide and realize, am I cut out for this? How much do I want this, and do I want it for the right reasons? Because if you start out a career and everything's like, whoa, you become famous instantly and all that, maybe you're so caught up in the success and the glamour and all that, you're not really doing it for the right reasons. And if someone has a different idea of why you want to be a musician, I think that's perfectly fine, because we all have our own dreams and our own goals, and it's perfectly all right to go with.
And of course, they have different approach.
I mean, I think Bihzhu is your consummate artist. She's the one saying that I don't care what, I'm going to play what I love, and that's the truth. Sometimes you gotta understand that it's passion. We're in a passion-driven business. The more passion that you show on top of stage, and you won't be able to show it unless you mean it, the more passion you show on stage, the more people are driven to go towards you. And I think that's the only way that you can hold anybody's attention, is by drawing them towards you with your passion, what you're passionate about.
Nowadays, there's a boom of reality stars, YouTube stars, and all these, like commodity form of entertainment around. So how do you compete with that? And what do you think of these artists, or do you even call them artists?
I mean, I agree with Bihzhu. However anybody makes it as an artist, or whatever road they choose, you've got to salute them. People talk about Koreans, I don't like this, I don't like that. No, you don't. You have to salute them. You try dancing and singing, miming. It's bloody hard. It's not easy.
I'll probably end up as William Hung.
Exactly, and that's not even singing, but you are still projecting talent. You're able to do something that not everybody can do, and go through a life that not everybody can go through. But having said that, those programs like The Voice and American Idol are very much geared to do your marketing for you before you release an album. And that is actually truly what most artists should do, is make the fan base and then release the album, because then you have the fan base to buy your album in the first place. Because if you don't have a fan base and you come out with an album, nobody's going to know you're alive. It's only your mother, father, brother, sister, and maybe a couple of uncles who know that you're alive.
Yes.
So if you look at people's success story in Malaysia, you will see that, especially in the last 10, 15 years, you will see that they did grassroots. They built their fan base first before they came out with the album. Bang Face, Hujan Yuna. You see that.
They were touring like mad.
They're performing like mad, whether touring or not. Hujan was touring. Yuna performed a lot of shows. But the material was available for free on the internet for like 2 years before they even came out with a solid album. But when they came out with a solid album, even though the material had been available for free, people still bought, because they felt that connection, emotional connection with the artist after seeing them on the ground for so long. But not everybody can survive that. Not everybody can do it that way, because it takes a different kind. I mean, everybody has different paths.
Yeah, you have to be really driven.
Do you agree with that?
I agree with that. I think the thing that sometimes people forget, when people look at artists or music or the arts in general, people see the success stories. People don't see the hours they spent at home practicing this one song again and again and again and again to perform 10 minutes on TV. Like my favorite story I'll often tell my students is that when I perform with Reza Saleh at DFP, my slot on stage at Dewan Philharmonic with Reza is about 5 minutes. But I would have practiced about 8 hours over his song is about a 6-chord song, which a lot of people will dismiss like, that's why you need to practice that. It's just like 6 chords. It's so easy. But that's not the point. The point is that when you go on stage, you have to, as soon as you walk, before you play a single note, you have to make an impact. People have to know that, whoa, before you even play. And the thing is to do that again and again and again and again, every single show, whether it's a small show with 5 people in the audience, or 1,000 people in the audience, or on TV where millions are watching, and to do that again and again for a long time, longevity. And that's why like people like Yuna, Bangfei, Hujan, they are doing this thing, and it's not a single show that makes them successful. It's repeated shows, including the failed shows, including where no one's listening. Now, if you do it for a long time, only then can you build some kind of traction. A lot of people quit after a year. Because it's actually, the truth is, in the indie scene in Malaysia, you can be famous in a few months. Just perform at every single Reza Saleh open mic again and again. Just perform at Shanil's open mic.
You're talking about him a lot.
And then, perform at, try to figure out how to get on Urbanscapes. Try to be on all the regular platforms, eventually people are going to see, wow,
but famous
amazing.
doesn't mean money, eh?
Yeah. So this has nothing to do with making money, but in terms of being famous.
Are you saying that is that how people do measure the popularity, fame based on how frequent they can see artists from certain channels?
In the beginning,
and,
yeah. If you see, okay, let's say on Facebook, you go on Facebook, and then you see suddenly like, who's this artist? You see once, you're like, oh, whatever lah, somebody new. Then you see like, hey, featured on this show. Then you're like, hey, on TV3. Hey,
and then people reaction is, oh, not bad.
Hey, got something on Fly FM. Like then you're like, hey, featured by this. If you keep seeing them again and again, eventually you're going to go to their Facebook page and check out. It's like, wow, they're really big.
Correct. So it's in your face, lah.
Yeah, you need to see people again and again.
But it's interesting that As mentioned about longevity as well. Like for example, if you ask if As Samad is a household name like Yuna, probably not. But he's I mean I've seen him work really hard, and he's done so many tours overseas, and that and I think sometimes that's towards building a career that spans a long time. Like if I could keep singing until I'm 60, I would be really happy, and I think what maybe we come from the same aim, where we're not aiming to be overnight sensations. We're in this for the long haul, and hence the approach will be a lot different.
So you need to go hungry.
You
First,
don't have to go hungry. In fact, I think going hungry is a really bad approach, because if you're hungry, you have to go for a day job. I'm against the whole hungry artist thing. I think you should be trying to make a living out of it, because if you get depressed, right, you're gonna quit music.
Yeah.
See, I told you it's positive.
Yeah. And I said, I think, don't misunderstand me when I say every artist has to go hungry. I think that's just like
it's an expression.
It
is the want to do well. That's what
and then
Bihzhu
it's
is
how
saying
people
about.
also set image to artists in general.
Yeah. I don't want to be a hungry artist.
Yeah,
either.
we like nice food.
Yeah, and I like shopping.
we love our nasi lemak. We'll take a short break. When we return, Gowri, Grace and myself will be discussing more on the music development in Malaysia.
ASEAN Breakfast Call Dialogue, widening your horizons.
Shoo-be-doo-papa, shoo-be-doo-papa. Just now the song was very infectious.
And then she kept singing, and it's quite hooky.
It's Hard Way by Bihzhu, and earlier before Bihzhu was a song by it's a finger guitarist performance.
Yes.
By Asamad. What's the title? I can't remember the title now, but we will get there. So we are continuing the discussion about the music development in Malaysia. Earlier on, we had Asamad, we have Bihzhu, and of course we have Jennifer Thompson, an industry veteran. A lot of information were being shared there. But among the three of us, of course, I'm Arlene.
I'm Gowri. And welcome back. This is Grace.
And we are going to discuss among ourselves about what we observe as an outsider in the music industry, on what is kind of the issues and the challenges that singers, songwriters are facing within the music industry. The first area that we would like to discuss is about when it comes to the government approach towards Malaysian music industry. The government of Malaysia, on a positive note, they do allocate funds towards music development, but what kind of music? That's the question, because a lot of the genre of music that the government focus are mainly about traditional music, or music that has this truly Asia, Malaysia truly Asia flavor on it.
Yes, because when it comes to popular music or mainstream music, or even independent bands that are trying to come up, the government doesn't really want to intervene or want to do anything.
Or maybe they're not
that.
even aware that this group exists. They would rather let them flourish by themselves.
Because the government usually does it through universities. And universities, like you said, focus on traditional music like gamelan or mak yong and all that kind of genre. So when it comes to all these bands, maybe all these upcoming artists, no matter how talented they are, there is no one institution that can actually properly apply for funding or to even let the government know that they exist and they need as much help as the traditional music.
And also, in addition to that, what Jennifer Thompson mentioned before, there is also difference between how government supports towards the mainstream and also towards the indie bands or indie musicians in Malaysia. There's a huge differences between in terms of funding as well. But apparently the government did announce before that next year, 2015, will be the year of festivals in Malaysia, and definitely they will open a few more platforms for musicians. Of course, they will come. It will come with cons and pros, because all those musicians who have been active and performing in Malaysia, they'll be playing again for the next year. However, it's again the niche market for those who just started as musicians and as performers in Malaysia to be able to break through this industry.
A lot of the issues that the struggling musician face is because they need avenues to play their music, and having more festival probably will be a good thing for them as well.
Definitely, it's a good opportunity for them. We have very famous festivals like Penang Jazz Island Jazz Festivals, and we also have festivals from other states in Malaysia,
like the Sarawak.
Definitely. Those are the very distinctive and then been there for decades in Malaysia. However, having more festivals in Malaysia will definitely open platform that, like I mentioned before. But at the same time, indie musicians, they will still have a struggles among themselves.
Because like you said, yes, we have the Penang Island Jazz Festival, we have the Rainforest Festival, but I think with festivals like this, it only caters to particular musicians or particular bands, because if it's a jazz festival,
genre.
You cannot have a lot of different bands performing. It's only catered to probably the jazz group.
What about fusion bands that inculcate two different genres at the same time? I mean, at the end of the day, people want to have an access to music, but they want to have access to variety of music. And
but in fact, the fusion music is easier to be able to be accepted by audience, because it's a blend of this and that. So people sometimes they can relate to the particular genre more than just specifically, it's just a pure jazz or pure something.
That's true. When it comes to festival, a lot of these major festival like the Jazz Festival and the Rainforest Festival in Sarawak, it shows that if the state government is serious in supporting this music industry, actually it can happen. But what about at the federal level? Is there any policy mention? I don't think there's any policy mention in the budget 2015 to upgrade the music industry in this country.
In fact, nothing has mentioned regarding the music industry or art industry.
The only budget allocation that would probably go to music is the youth transformation program, where, of course, when it comes to youth, music would be one of their top priority.
But then that's
not number 4.
That's a bit of the different story in terms of funding to the musicians. For example, Bihzhu, indeed, she went to Korea to have a performances there, and it was great. I was also there, and then the scene there is a bit different in terms of a standard, because the government does support all musicians from outside and also local musicians in Korea.
How does the government support the musicians?
They will have their own agency and an organization which are fully supporting the local scenes as well as the musicians.
So in Malaysia, we don't have a specific agency to somehow not monitor but give to provide assistance. It can be monetary or non-monetary to these indie bands.
I wouldn't say there is none. There are. I believe I'm not really deep into this industry. However, I can say there are, but then they are not really catering into all these the indie musicians.
But would you guys think that it makes sense to have one agency and get all the independent bands in the country, all the independent artists to come together?
But there's also downfall of it, because it could they could just play mono, they could just control the whole systems in Malaysia.
So that's the problem of government intervention. Then you have the Jakim version of the music industry. That would be a problem as well.
Because what we have now is, of course, we have private sectors coming in, and I think we have like Guinness who brought in Magic recently, and before Magic, of course, they had two other local bands to actually open for
But it makes
for
sense
the
to
band.
have beer and cigarettes company to sponsor this festival, partly because they are the ones with money.
Right, and at the end of the day, you want the profits as well, because if it's government intervention, they always take a more welfare-like approach, because eventually they want the well-being of the people.
Now we are having a socialist libertarian debate.
Right, but if it comes to music, of course they're gonna ask what's in it for the people. If I were to support this, okay, I give you all this funding, like so what? Like how does it benefit the people back?
Mm-hmm. About funding is a contentious issue because on the other end of the spectrum, musicians also need to repackage themselves. They cannot rely so much on external assistance. They have to be an entrepreneur themselves. I mean, you yourself from Fast Band, being an entrepreneur, having the entrepreneurial skills is one of the core, I would say, driving force for any musician to be able to move forward.
Well, based on my experience is not as like deep as Azamat or Bihzhu, also of course Jennifer Thompson, but purely based on what I've experienced in Malaysia. I always have the struggle between being an entrepreneur at the same time being a true musician, because personally I always want to let the music speak more than my my words, my actions. However, there's also I need to have the mindset of entrepreneur as a business woman.
It's like a struggle between this free creative mindset where you don't have like a specific structure towards being a manager, where you need a specific structure, specific goal, and maybe towards more profit-oriented sort of motivation.
Yeah, exactly. It is also like a business where you need to have a set of goals, like for perhaps like next year or in 5 years. Where do you see yourself in? Are you going to be a full-time musician, or are you just going to be a manager for certain artists? It's also another different story.
So the best way is to be like Asamat, hire a manager.
But I guess in this in Malaysia as well, it's not enough to only have that one skill. Because even when we spoke to Christian earlier, he said he writes, he arranges, he mixes, he masters his songs.
Christian Tessera,
that's
the
right.
R&B up-and-coming musician.
And so in order to actually to make it in Malaysia, you cannot just rely like, okay, I can sing and that has to be good enough, and you cannot stop there. You have to go beyond that and actually take more responsibilities.
And that comes with your marketing strategy and your PR skills. And in addition to that, you gotta have a softer skills to be able to go out and then bring yourself and then deliver your skills to people.
Interesting you mentioned about social media, because one of the key criteria how corporate companies look for artists for them to sponsor, and in order for them to be able to hold any festival or concerts, is looking at how popular these artists are. And the only way for them to measure is via their social media penetration, like how many Facebook likes you have and how many YouTube's view you have among your viewers. And if you have a website, if your website is frequently being visited by people, it also shows that you are a popular band. So for corporate companies, they don't really care so much about whether your music has quality or it's just a monotonous music, one-dimensional. But to them, like the more popular you are, the better. But to be popular is not easy, because social media can only go that far.
Social media is definitely another tool for musicians to be able to check their popularity in the public, and it's really hard to neglect those elements.
And you have to compete with all these YouTube stars,
YouTube stars are but different, I will say different level of exposing themselves, because it could be just overnight they can just open up next morning and say, oh my god, I just hit this view and I'm already like this famous at this level.
But to go back to social media, when it comes to YouTube, you don't actually know if you can have like the highest number of likes, but you don't know that did people accidentally click on the video? Did people really watch it? Or was it the same person watching it over and over again? There are a lot of underlying factors as well when it comes to just gauging
Or the person
number.
could be a one-hit wonder. I mean, the most viewed YouTube video so far is Gangnam Style.
Yeah.
just to put things in perspective.
Grace is not happy.
I am happy because it's from my country, but it's just that was really sort of like tsunami attack in the music industry.
And well, the larger picture here is how can musicians sustain themselves? Because at the end of the day, to have a career in music is not just to have an album of two. It's actually to see this as what you are. It's part of your own identity, which means that you're doing this for the long term. So how can musicians expand themselves and be sustainable?
Based on what Azamat said before, he mentioned that we do something is related to music still, rather than performing. Perhaps we can be a music educator, or perhaps we can have a music production to be able to sustain financially.
A lot of the local musicians are also doing 2 or 3 things at the same time. For example, Reza Sadeh is an event organizer.
So that could be also another one that musicians can sustain. And then but then we don't really prioritize on that part also, because we are musicians. We perform outside as a performer's basis, of course.
And talking about performing, usually having a deeper penetration towards the whole of Malaysia is more important. Right now, a lot of the scene are happening in urban areas, but the penetration towards the kampung folks is very limited, very minimal. And I still remember Asamat said something about having a touring circuit. And this is an idea that has never been explored yet.
Well, it's not a new idea, to be honest, but then to be able to come up with that idea from Azamat, because he is a very experienced musician, so he played outside from Malaysia before, so he has seen a lot of culture and scenes, what's happening in outside from Malaysia. So but then to be able to implement that idea in Malaysia, nobody has done that before properly. Yeah, other than the all those big events, Battle of the Band, or those competitions, they will make musicians travel in Malaysia.
And the demand is really high
for short term.
The demand is really high. I mean, I'm a fan of live band. I prefer to listen to a singer singing live than watching YouTube, because you have that physical, emotional experience.
And you got the interaction between audiences and the musicians on stage.
But going back to what we were discussing earlier, maybe I want to ask Grace, since she's in a band, would you say that in order to really take off and to make a career out of music, you need to be picked up by a record company, or do you think it's possible to go at it by yourself?
It is possible. But it's not a really I wouldn't say it's not easy at all to be put it in the very simple words, because you have no contacts, you have no network. Who are you going to approach your music to?
Unless you are Macklemore and Ryan Lewis. They are an independent band that managed to reach to the top with their, of course, popular song Thrift Shop.
So like we all agreed before, Bihzhu, Azamat, and Jennifer Thompson, mingling, having a mamak session, after the show or events. It's very important to get to know each other, and probably you find the same interest among the other musicians, and you'll be able to, go further from there. So Bihzhu and Azamat are a really good example, because they started as a small community, and then they managed to extend themselves and expand themselves.
And they also create the industry on their own. They hold a lot of open mics event.
So this is one of the Asamat's messages that he would love to deliver, and then for our listeners and from Durian ASEAN, he said, make music, perform and work at your craft. Do it for a long time, keep creating new music and tell people about it. Be patient and do it. Well, for music lovers, please buy the music you love, go for shows, share videos of the musicians you love.
Tell the musicians you like the music. It's easier than ever to get in touch directly with the people who make the music you love, so get in touch. It can be a lonely process making music, so Azamat, I for one love hearing from people who listen to the music I make.
With that, that's the end of our show. Thank you.